Hello and welcome to the Kate Gourmet. My name is Jeremy. Today we won't be making a Japanese dish, but we will be using a Japanese ingredient to make something very special. Kabocha ravioli. I'll show you how. Let's get started. This dish is really special to me because I learned how to make ravioli literally the week before I came to Japan. My little grandmother from Sicily, she showed me how. When I came to Japan, I couldn't find any ricotta cheese. I had to experiment with different fillings. Eventually, I discovered using kabocha. So I started making ravioli with kabocha filling every November for Thanksgiving. So I'm gonna show you how. First things first, with ravioli, we'll make the dough. It'll be 300 grams of flour to 3 eggs. So it's 1 egg to 100 grams of flour. We'll get our recipe ready. Clean off your counter, and you can do this right on the countertop. Make a little volcano with your flour and crack your eggs directly into the center, just like that. Thoroughly beat the eggs. Slowly take in the flour, and the dough will form as the flour is incorporated into the egg. The dough is forming, so we can get a little more aggressive about adding the flour. Get rid of the fork. The dough is going to tell us when it is ready. Okay, look at that. I think that's about good. Wrap up your dough and rest it in the refrigerator for about 30 minutes. Unlike pizza dough, it won't rise, but the flour will rehydrate. It might look dry now, but after 30 minutes, it'll look perfect and ready to go. And while our dough is resting, let's prepare the kabocha. Remove the pith and seeds with a spoon. Cut them into pieces. Shapes don't matter, as we'll be boiling them and pureeing them. So as long as they're even, so they'll cook even, that's fine. And peel the skin. Now this is kind of tricky, it's a little hard, so be careful. Okay, so our kabocha is cut. Let's make the filling. In a small pot, place your kabocha and cover with water. And basically we'll just boil this until they're soft. So turn this on high heat and let that come up to a boil. If you can't find kabocha squash in your supermarket, you can also do the same exact recipe with butternut squash, or even acorn squash would be nice. Okay, so we'll come back in 15 minutes to see how it looks. Let's check the kabocha. They're fork tender. So I'll strain these. Now that our kabocha squash has softened up, we will make it into a filling. It'll break apart really easily now. We'll just add some butter into a pan. Now that the butter is melted, we'll add the kabocha, and it should mash up nice and easily, just like that. It smells delicious too. Give the squash a little squash, and that is looking great. We didn't salt the water before, so we'll just add a little bit of salt. And a very essential ingredient is nutmeg. I couldn't get any of the fresh stuff. If you do have some fresh stuff, definitely grate some in, but I got it already ground up. Just sprinkle in a little nutmeg. I think a little cracked pepper is all right in this case too. It smells like the holidays with the nutmeg in it. You could run it through a strainer or a ricer to get out the lumps, but we're okay with a rustic feel. It's the holidays. And there we have our kabocha all mashed up. Little taste for seasoning. Very nice. And just to make this a little more smooth and a little more decadent, we're gonna add a little cream. Let's see. That should also really brighten up the color from an orange to a pretty yellow. Wow. Look at that, that is pretty. Okay, so there's our mixture. We're just gonna let that cool down before we use it as a filling. Okay, so our dough is rested for 30 minutes. Our filling is cooled. It's time to make ravioli. Even though the dough looked dry when we first put it in the refrigerator, it's nice and sticky now. Put some flour on the counter. We're gonna roll this a couple times just to develop some gluten. So fold it over, roll it, and fold it over, roll it. Of course, if you had a machine, to go much quicker, but you know, use what you have. If you don't have a rolling pin, you could also do this with a bottle of wine. Look at that, that is a nice looking pasta dough. Next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna divide this in half. Cover the half that you're not using so it doesn't dry out. And let's roll it out as thinly as possible. As thinly and as evenly as possible. But it's okay if you get some weird shapes. We'll be cutting them into shapes as long as they're closed and the filling is in the right spot. It should be no problem. I am running out of counter space, so that's about as far as I can stretch the dough out. Here is what we will do. So take your dough and fold it over in half. Then draw a line down the center. And we will fill with ravioli filling on one side of this. We're gonna be cutting with a glass, so make sure that you have enough space to fill and cut the ravioli with. Looks like we'll get about 8 and then we'll use the leftover dough. Now that the filling is cool, we'll add our egg. Put your filling into a freezer bag. We're gonna cut off the end and then pipe it in. Let's pipe into the center. Not too much, they might burst, so just a little bit. Okay, and now that they're piped into the center, very important, use a little water around the edges of the ravioli. So fold over, and then very important, just push the air out from each ravioli. Just push along the sides to get as much air out as possible. Because air, once they boil, will cause them to burst. And you don't want that. Now take your glass, just push down and twist. Push down and twist. And continue. Okay. We'll re-roll this, but there we have our first 8 ravioli. Just flour our pan, very carefully peel them from the surface of the counter, check the edges to make sure that they're sealed. We'll just repeat the process until all the dough or filling are gone. Okay, so we finished forming our ravioli. Now the only thing left to do is boil them and toss them in some butter. Just add a little salt to the water. And while we boil the ravioli, since it's fresh pasta, it should boil pretty quickly, we will prepare our sauce. We're not gonna do anything too complicated. We will just melt some butter and fry a little sage in it and toss it. Okay, so while our water's boiling, melt about 4 tablespoons of butter. The sage I'll have to chop finely. It's time to put the ravioli in the boiling water. Turn it to like a medium so it's not too angry of a boil. Very important, make sure that you stir the water into like a vortex. Do not just drop them in without some movement because they'll just sink to the bottom and probably get stuck and then they'll break apart and that's no fun. All right, and drop the raviolis in one by one. Make sure they're moving and not sticking to the bottom or each other. When they float to the top like this means they're done. Just gotta fry a little sage first. Just gonna give it a rough chop. Sage and pumpkin go really nice together, so that's why we're using it in a recipe like this. So we'll just fry a little sage in some butter. Let that get brown. So I'll take this batch out and put in the next. So just give them a quick pan fry in some brown butter and sage. So to finish our plate of ravioli, we'll just sprinkle on a little more nutmeg, and we'll shave a little Parmesan cheese. And there it is, Kabocha ravioli. Let's give it a taste. In this case, we're using a fork instead of chopsticks this time. It's so good. Making it just every year in Japan, it's now become nostalgic for me. If you see kabocha squash in your grocery store, give it a try and try making some ravioli with it. Have you ever seen kabocha in your grocery store? Let me know in the comments down below. If you've made any of the dishes I've introduced on this channel, please feel free to tag me on Instagram. I'd love to see what you come up with. Please give this video a like and subscribe for more Japanese home cooking recipes. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Happy Thanksgiving.